Hi everyone, I'm Zan from Felon Fair, and today's video is going to be on helmets. Choosing the right one for your medieval or fantasy purposes, both when trying to achieve a certain look and get a certain performance out of it. So we hope you enjoy, we hope this is helpful. If it is, please subscribe to our channel, that way you'll get notifications when we post new videos and such. It also really helps us and helps us make more videos. Also, please like the video if you enjoy it, and comment in the comment section if you want to see more videos about what we do and about the different ideas, and just there's so many elements that go into costuming for medieval and fantasy things that we want to hear from you guys, to hear what you want to see, so that we can kind of help deliver that for you. Anyway, thanks guys. So when it comes to choosing a medieval or fantasy helmet, there's a couple things that you got to think about. First of all, you got to get your look right? So no matter if you're designing for a film, a TV show, if you're doing something for stage, for theater work, if you are doing something for a LARP or a cosplay, you want to make sure that the helmet looks right. So sometimes, especially with cosplay or something like that, you're trying to hit a really specific look. And then sometimes on the historical reenactment side, you're limited by, what was available at the time, the certain designs and the principles that were employed in designing and making helmets at a certain time period. So you have to understand what you're dealing with. But a lot of people are just dealing with, they say, I want something that looks like it fits in this environment. So medieval and fantasy is very broad. That goes all the way back to Vikings, all the way up to late medieval full plate armor stuff. And you have fantasy, which kind of it's no holds barred. And so you have to really figure out what you're looking at, and a lot of that is going to be culture dependent. So depending on the character you're trying to portray and what resources and technology they had access to. So is this a Viking with a slightly more primitive aspect, or is this a very developed, almost Renaissance level culture? That technology, the resources they have access to, is going to really determine what you choose when it comes to picking a design for a helmet. Now, helmets were really, really important in any sort of medieval fighting. In fact, if you look at the way things kind of work throughout history, usually the first thing any soldier wanted was a shield, right? That's big, it's cheap, it's inexpensive, and it does gives you a lot of protective value. The next piece of armor that they would usually add, if they could, if they had the resources to make it, would be some sort of helmet. Obviously, protecting your head, not only is it important to, for survival, but also, if any of you ever been hit in the head before, whether in a real fight or in, a LARP or something like that, you realize that head strikes really do a lot to disorient you. There's a lot of, pain and that sort of stuff involved. So, the more secure you can keep your head, the more effective you're going to be in a battle. Now, you got to be careful, because you don't want to overdo it and have a helmet that prevents you from functioning properly in battle, even if somebody could beat away at it all day with a hammer and you wouldn't hurt your head. But if you can't see, if you can't move, then you're going to become ineffective. And that's kind of the second thing that you're looking for in a helmet, is something that's comfortable and usable by the person using it. Now, if you're designing for a film or something, especially a lower budget film or a short film where the actor doesn't have years of experience wearing armor, they don't have a ton of combat experience, you don't want to put them in something that's going to be so cumbersome, so big, that they are ineffective and they don't look like they're that knight that would have had that training and that sort of stuff. So you want your characters, and that goes for LARPers and cosplayers and stuff too, but if you're going to realistically portray a character, you have to make something that's functional and practical for that person. So keep that in mind as you're choosing. Now, I always like to start simple, start at the very basics and kind of build up from there. So when I go to look at helmets, I always kind of start at the Nasal Helm. The Nasal Helm, was in service for ages. It does the minimum of what you need to do. It protects your head, it protects your nose for any cross blows. And so it's a really great place to start. The other great thing about it is you all have almost complete visibility out of it, and you have complete range of motion with your head and neck. So This is a very easy and simple helmet for anybody, from a very experienced warfighter to a very to kind of a newbie to wear. So I have dozens of these because I absolutely love them. Now, a little disclaimer here: we are going to have links in the bio to as many of these helmets as we can. Some of these were provided for us from Epic Armory, and so we just want to let you guys know that. Try to give very honest reviews. We're not being biased here. I've spent a lot of my own money on these helmets from Epic Armory. We use them in all our films and that sort of stuff. Just because, honestly, for the price, I think they're the best ones out there. So, if you disagree, I'd love to hear. Put some links in the comments section. But I really, really like the Epic Armory nasal helms. Another really great little tidbit that they recently added is they started putting these medieval brass buckles on all their helmets. On the chin straps, and I really, really like that. I think it really adds a nice historical touch. They used to have these really kind of shiny metal buckles. Let me see if I have an older version. Yeah, you can see here, this is an older Epic Armory visored barbute here, and it's got this shiny metal, very modern buckle, which we would always go and we'd have to cut them off and replace them like we did with this helmet with a more antique-looking brass buckle. So anyway, great on Epic Armory for doing that. That was a real plus, and it showed that they really were listening to the community and really cared about what their customers thought. Anyway, back to helmets. So nasal helm is where I always start. It's very simple, very easy. The other great thing is, like I said, it is appropriate for a wide variety, not only of medieval but also of fantasy applications. There's another great thing. And I say this about all helmets. When you're purchasing a helmet, think of it as a blank piece of canvas. Now, you can wear that helmet right out the box. It'll look fine. But there's a lot you can do. For example, this one, we used a metal patina to darken it and then used a clear coat sealer to seal over it. That way we don't constantly have to keep it oiled and that sort of stuff. You can see this one, we didn't seal, and it's got a little bit of rust on it. So a little bit of oil and a little bit of Scotch-Brite pad or steel wool will take that right off. But, because we sprayed this one right after finishing it, it has that oiled look, but we never actually have to oil it. So, like I said, think of helmets as a blank canvas. They can be painted, they can be stained. You can add other pieces to them. For example, this helmet, we added this leather protection back here. We tore out all the lining, put in new pads, put a new chin strap. So think of it as, like I said, as a piece of artwork that you can create. Don't just look at a helmet. Look at a helmet and see what it can be, not just what it is at the moment. If you have any degree of desire to do any sort of crafting or that sort of stuff, or any skill in that area. So now, once we've done, we've talked about a very simple nasal helm. So now you kind of break into the realm of history or fantasy. So if you're going for a historical helm, there's some advantages to that, obviously. Historical helms are usually very practical because they were made to be functional. And then if you're trying to portray a certain era, then you're going to be able to more accurately portray it. The downside is if you're trying to do any sort of fantasy stuff, is a lot of these historical designs have very iconic looks to them, right? So, for example, I've got here a Crusader helm from Epic Armory, and this is another one that I got off Amazon. And so these are very clearly Crusade era, 11th, 12th, 13th century helmets. Well, 12th, 13th century helmets. So these are going to have a very distinct look. If you saw somebody wearing one of these in Lord of the Rings, you'd be like, oh, that guy looks like a Crusader. So you got to be careful in fantasy applications. Sometimes you can get away with it, and sometimes they're great context, and sometimes you want to draw out that feeling, especially in a film or a fantasy thing. You want people to, you want them to associate things with, like, oh, that guy's a Crusader, or so therefore he must have a lot of the same principles that maybe a Crusader had, whether in fighting style or values, that sort of stuff. So just think about that. Now, with these two helmets, like I said, there's a lot of options out there. So this one's from Epic Armory. This one I got off Amazon. There's pluses and minuses to both of them. In this one, honestly, there's a little bit more nose room, and I like that. I've kind of got a long nose. So if that's a big deal to you, then that's a great option. Now, the advantage to the Epic Armory one is it comes with the liner, and it comes with a buckle and strap. It also comes in both a medium and a large size. This is a one-size-fits-all. So sometimes these can definitely, out of the box, this is going to be your better option hands down every time. So I definitely would recommend in that scenario getting this the Epic Armory helmet. Now, especially if you're trying to add variety, if you're trying to create a group of people, and you don't want everybody to look cookie cutter. They didn't have Crusader, Target. They didn't have Crusader, department stores. So they had to go, and everyone was handmade. So there would have been variation as different craftsmen, and even the same craftsmen made different helmets. So that's the reason we have multiples. I mean, we get them from different manufacturers and that sort of stuff to create a variety of looks. So this one we had to go in, we had to put a lining in, we had to put these chin straps on, that sort of stuff. So this one took a lot more work to get ready. Another little trick is a lot of times there's rivets along the nose of different helmets. And so we just glued a little bit of felt right here in the back. It's actually wool fabric. And that just keeps your nose from rubbing raw on the little thing. So like I said, treat helmets as raw materials, as a blank canvas, not as a final product. If you're disappointed with your helmet right out the box, try giving it a little love. Try tweaking it a little bit and see if you can make it work. Just don't be disappointed right away. Now, kind of going with that Crusader look, this is a Epic Armory nasal helm that we took. We kept the lining, we kept the straps, but we just added this little face guard to it right here. So that, it changed up the look a little bit. So we got the raw materials right here. We added the face guard. I actually have to put another rivet in the nose to keep it from sliding here. But this created another look for us. There is a historical precedent for this sort of look. A lot of times in that 12th century, 13th century time period, you would see people putting masks on nasal helms, especially the Italo-Normans and those types. And so that, it kind of now harkens a little more towards a helmet more like this. So like I said, treat it as a kind of a blank canvas. Now, the other thing you can do is I could have put a different design when it comes to a face mask here. Maybe make it look a little more fantasy, make it look more like a dwarf mask from the dwarven helmets in The Hobbit, or that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different options that you can do there. Now, when it comes to fantasy helmets, I really like to still maintain a strong historical basis. And if you were wondering why, the answer is because, and we say this all the time in our videos, but functional equals believable. So if a helmet really functions properly, if it looks like it's there to protect your head and and you can move and fight in it well, then people are going to believe, okay, that's probably a legit helmet, a legit warrior. So you don't want to stray too far from the practical, battle-proven designs that were developed throughout history. So I really love, this is one of my favorite helmets from Epic Armory, the Raven helm right here. And so what we did with this, or what they did with this, it's very Viking looking, but it's not based on a find or anything. So this is a great fantasy option. Now, it's also not a bad Viking helmet, because even though we don't have a find that specifically says a Viking helmet that looks like this, because it draws from so many elements that are historically based, a Viking could have come up with this, no problem at all. So that's something that, some people, there's kind of varied opinions, and I'm not trying to give history lessons here, I'm not trying to make historical statements, but I think that while I do like to really maintain a strong historical theme, I give people a little more grace when they kind of make artistic decisions based on some things, because we haven't found every single Viking helm that ever existed, so we don't know. One could have looked like this. If I, as a designer, can look at an item for 10 minutes and think, I wonder if we did it this way, and I have access to the same resources and tools that a Viking would have, then one of them could have thought of that and come up with that too. So just something to keep in mind. Another kind of historically inspired, yet still kind of fantasy helmet is this. This is the visored Barbuda helmet from Epic Armory. I really love this one. I've used this one as the basis for a bunch of different helmets. It's pretty comfortable. Something that it has that a lot of the visored Barbudas out there don't have is you can see it kind of comes up. It has this angle here. A lot of them comes all the way down here, which makes it really hard to move your neck and head. So I really like this one. Also, it comes in two sizes. I'm a medium in this, so I really like, this is the large size, but I really like the medium size because it conforms to your head real well. You still have a lot of mobility, and you can still fight really well in it. And, that, like I said, that leads us back to whatever you're doing. Even if you think this is the coolest helmet of all time, if you've got a brand new actor who's never fought in armor before, maybe you don't go with the big, over-the-top, really cool looking Barbuda helmet. Maybe you go with a nasal helm just so they can see everything, they can get full range of motion with their head. Those sort of things are really key when it comes to choosing whatever helmet you're actually gonna go with for a film. Some other things that you can do to helmets. You can see this is this is one I got off Amazon. We'll have a link to this one as well. And this looked very different. It was silver. We added this. Something else that we did is we took out the liner and put in modern military H harness right here in the back and padding. Now this, talk about function and purpose for different helmets. This is my event helmet. So when we do our event Weekend Warrior, this is what I wear. This sole purpose for this is to defend my gray matter, the old brain up there. So it's got a lot of different features that I really love, and this is where it comes to the practical. Remember, once again, functional equals believable. So this can guard my face, my nose. These slits are small enough so that an arrow, LARP arrow, can't get through there. Honestly, this, when I have it on, it comes down to about right here, so it even really protects all my mouth and stuff as well. This protects my cheeks and ears. I've got this to kind of protect my neck and the back of my head. And then this is really key because I put this H harness in here. The reason I did that is a lot of helmets, especially if they're front weighted like this, when you move your head forward, the whole helmet wants to go forward on your head, which makes it really hard to see and fight. You already have limited visibility, so reducing that or having that limited visibility move around is really frustrating when you're trying to fight. So this H harness has a little thing that kind of grabs you by the back of the skull, and when you tighten that up, it prevents your helmet from falling forward. Now, a lot of times, this is the way I started it, but even though I concealed it with leather and linen and stuff, I wasn't really satisfied. I wanted to do something better, so I bought this Raven helm from Epic Armory, ripped the guts out of it, ripped the liner and everything, put padding in, and then made an H harness, same design. I basically bought another one of these and broke it apart, and then made an H harness out of leather with it. So this is, antique brass buckles and leather. So this will serve the same purpose, to keep the head from moving around on my head, but it's the cool Epic Armory Raven helm look, and it's all, period appropriate for our fantasy world. So that's another option. So once again, if you're looking for a helmet to actually go fight in, obviously protection is key. I mean, this, while it's great and will protect you from a lot of stuff, won't protect you from as much as something like this will. So it's something to keep in mind. I've been hit in the face and all over, really, enough in my life. I have nothing to prove. Not worried about my man card being revoked. I'm going to walk. I do not go into a fight without wearing a helmet. That's just hands down. That's all I do. And because of that, I try to design my characters, especially in films and stuff, where they have the kind of protection that they would want. Now, every once in a while, you have to make decisions, and this is where I love nasal helms because, for example, in our first Fox and the Dragon film, none of the heroes wore helmets, and the reason was because there was basically no dialogue in the film. So all the emotion, all the story had to be told through the faces and the facial expressions of the characters. So that's something to think about. Is this, I'm doing a film. You may have the coolest helmets of all time, but if the faces are covered, then you're not going to be portraying any emotion. That's why in most Hollywood films, heroes don't wear helmets, just because how else? Or they lose them, they rip them off, right as the battle starts, because how else are they going to act, basically, if their faces are covered? So just thinking, or things to think about, unless you're Tom Hardy, in which case that man has never acted with his face exposed and still is amazing. So unless you're Tom Hardy, your main characters may want more exposed helmets. Anyway, that's kind of the rundown for helmets, folks. I'm sure there's some things I didn't cover. I'm sure there's some questions you guys have, so please ask them in the comments. Like the video, subscribe for more stuff, and you can also follow us on Fel & Fair on Instagram at Fel & Fair, and we post pretty regularly, and you'll also get announcements and stuff there when we have new content coming out. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support, and we hope you find this video helpful.